Let's get started, everyone. Tani Tana Kamei Rav Nachman. We're on Daf Nun Vav Amud Aleph, the second line. We started introducing this idea yesterday that we're now going over the floor dimensions of the Azara. Now, this is not the entire temple compound. This is only the Azara, the actual courtyard where the Mizbeach is located, where the Shechita is done. But there is an entire Ezras Nashim, which is in addition to the Azara. But this is just the dimensions of the Azara, the temple courtyard. So Kol HaAzara, Haisa Kuf Pei Zayin Al Rochav Kuf Lamed Hey, that the entire dimensions of the Azara is a rectangle of 187 by 135. Amar Lei, so Rav Nachman hears this brisa quoted. He says to the quoter, Amar Li Abba Kigon Zeh Kohanim Nichnasim L'Sham, Va'ochlin Sham Kodshei Kodshim, V'shochten Sham Kodshim Kalim, V'chayavin Mishum Tuma. He says, my father taught me that in those dimensions, in those environs of the Azara, the Kohanim are allowed to enter into that area, only the Kohanim, and, well, it's not clear if it's only the Kohanim. I mean, Yisraelim are allowed to go there as well, but for what purpose do the Kohanim enter into the Azara? To eat Kodshei Kodshim. In other words, they can only eat Kodshei Kodshim within the environs of the Azara. V'shochten Sham Kodshim Kalim, and this is the only area where they can slaughter Kodshim Kalim, the lighter form of Kodshim. V'chayavin Mishum Tuma. And if they enter into only this area of the Azara, they are going to have to bring, in a state of Tumah, they have to bring a carbon to atone. Anywhere outside of these dimensions, if they are Tameh, would not be an infraction. Lima'ute mai. So what are these dimensions coming to exclude? Usually, I mean, you delineate something like this to the exclusion of something. So what is it to the exclusion of? Ilema lima'ute chalonos tulasos va'ove hachoma. Tanina chalonos va'ove hachoma kilifnim. It can't be to the exclusion of the width of the windows, doorways, and walls, because the Brisa says explicitly that included in the holiness of the Azara is the wall widths and the window widths and the door widths. So that can't be what it's coming to exclude. Ve'ela lima'ute lishkos. So the alternative is that it's coming to exclude any kind of chamber that is an adjunct to the Azara, but is outside of this rectangular dimension of 187 by 135. They would have adjunct lishkos, which we learn about in Maseches Midos, about all of these different chambers where the Kohanim would prepare. There was a whole chamber where they would have a fire, and the Kohanim would come in. There was another chamber that seems from this Gemara today that it was behind the area of the Ulam where the Kohanim could come in and quickly go into the Ulam from the back and get their knives and so forth. So those chambers, if a person were to be in a state of Tumah, that would not be an infraction. And he couldn't eat Kodshei Kodshim there, and he couldn't shecht Kodshim Kalim there.
So is the dimension on the outside of the rest of the wall? It's not the usable space that we're talking about. We're talking about the total space.
It seems from the Gemara's statement that it's including the widths of the wall, that
it's outside.
That it's from the perimeter, right, from the outside. That's what it seems like. So the Gemara says, now wait a minute, let's talk about these chambers for a second. If they're built on profane space, not non-hallowed ground, and they open up into the hallowed Azara, so then v'hatnan tochen kodesh, doesn't it say tochen kodesh? Doesn't it say in a Mishnah that all of the chambers that open up into the Azara also have a sanctity? So how can you tell me that they're not sanctified? So the Gemara answers midirabanan. They're only sanctified midirabanan, which means that you have to be machmir, that if you're tameh lechatchila, you're not allowed to enter into that lishka. But b'di'evet, if you did, you would not bring a korban. Udeoraisa lo. So you mean to tell me that biblically there's no sanctity to those lishkos? The hatanya lishkos pinuyos b'chol psuchos lekodesh minayin shakohanim nichnasin l'sham va'ochlin sham kodshei kodshim u'shiyarei mincha. There's a brisa that says explicitly to the contrary. It says, how do you know that if you have a chamber that is outside on the periphery of the Azara, and it opens up into the Azara, that the Kohanim are allowed to take their Kodshei Kodshim and their leftover mincha, and they're allowed to consume it there, Talmud Lomar. So you have to really, according to Rashi, you have to read the first part of the pasuk as well. The Torah is talking about the shiori hamincha, the leftover portions of the shirayim of a mincha after you've taken the komets. The kohanim, the komets is the fistful that's placed on the altar. The kohanim eat the leftover flour, which has the din of kodshei kodshim. And it says, b'makom, that matzos te'achel b'makom kadosh, you shall eat this unleavened flour in a holy place. B'chatzar ohel moed yocheluha. In the courtyard of the Ohel Moed, they shall eat it. There's a redundancy in that language, because if you told me to eat it in a holy place, then why did you have to enumerate the courtyard? Either say in the courtyard or say in the holy place. Why do you have to say both? So from there we learn, HaTorah ribsa chatzeros harbe etzel achila echas. The Torah is telling me that there are multiple places where you can eat kodshei kodshim, not just in the Azara, but in the places that are adjacent to the Azara, that open up into the Azara. And that's how I know that even though it's non-hallowed, like the Azara, kodshei kodshim can still be eaten. So this is a huge chiddush. What the Gemara is essentially saying, it's not sanctified, like the Azara, but the Torah gives a special dispensation that you can eat kodshei kodshim in those lishkos that open up to the Azara, even though they are not on non-hallowed ground. Amar Rava. So the Gemara now says, one second, I lost the place. So Eitzel Achila Echas. So the Gemara answers, this was the question, how can you tell me that it's not sanctified when the Brisa says that it is? I just sort of told you the answer. Amar Rava la Achila Shaini. So the answer is that eating is a unique dispensation. That's the way Rava explains it, as I had mentioned a moment ago. Aval le'inyan tumah lo. So you mean to tell me that as far as tumah, it is considered non-hallowed, so that if you enter into a lishka in a state of tumah, you would not have to bring a karban, and it's only rabbinic? V'hatanya lishkos habenuyos b'chol psuchos l'kodesh, kohanim nichnasim l'sham, v'ochlin sham kodshei kodshim, ve'ein shochtin sham kodshim kalim, v'chayavin mishum tumah. There's a brisa that seems to say just the opposite. It says that if you have one of these lishkos, you're allowed to eat kodshei kodshim, like we just mentioned, but you're not allowed to shecht kodshim kalim because it's non-hallowed. It's not considered the azara. But if you enter into it in a state of tumah, you are liable a carbon. You're telling me now because it's non-hallowed, you shouldn't be liable a carbon. So how do you reconcile that? So the Gemara says, listen, lav amart ein shochtin, tani nami ein chayavin. Listen, if the Brisa is acknowledging that you can't shecht kodshim kalim, so it's basically acknowledging that it's not like the Azara. So therefore, let's conclude that it's not like the Azara as well for Tumah, and you have to change the girsa of the Brisa. The Brisa didn't mean to say chayavin, it meant to say ein chayavin, that you're not liable if you enter into it in a state of Tumah. So the Gemara says, wait a minute, before you start changing any girsas, let's think about this logically. Bishlama ein shochtin ba'ina keneged ha'pesach v'leka, ela ein chayavin amai. But the Gemara says, wait a minute. Maybe the reason why the lishka is not a place for shechting kodshim kalim is not because it's non-hallowed, but rather because there's no visibility to the opening of the Ohel Moed. Remember, we said it's got to be lifnei Pesach Ohel Moed in order for you to shecht it. So remember, we learned that as long as there's visibility to a doorway into the Heichal, so that's a place for you to shecht. That's what we were talking about yesterday. Maybe the reason why a lishka is not a place for shechita is because in reality it is hallowed, but you can't see because you're in an adjacent chamber. Therefore, you can't see the doorway. So v'litai meich ein shochten milo askinan deika shechita keneged ha'pesach. But one second. Why then should the Brisa categorically state that you can never shecht in the lishka? Maybe there are certain kinds of lishkos that do have a visibility to one of the doorways to the heichal. For example, let's say a lishka like Rashi, like Rashi speaks out, that one of the lishkas was all the way to the west, on the backside of the ulam, which had visibility to one of those pishpashim, like we learned about yesterday, that was catty corner on the backside of the ulam. So you could theoretically be in the lishka, have visibility, you could see that doorway, and therefore what's wrong with shechting in the lishka if it's hallowed? Because if it's totally not visible, if there's no visibility at all, then why would the Brisa even need to make a point of saying it? Obviously you can't shecht. So ela afal gav de kashachit keneged pesach tani ein shochten mishum de lo kaddish. So therefore you must conclude that the reason why the Brisa tells you not to shecht there is not because there's no visibility, but rather because it's not sanctified. And tani nami ein chayavin. And therefore the Brisa also should be read as there's no liability if you enter in there in a state of tumah because there's no sanctity in the lishka. V'la'achila lo ba'inin keneged pesach. But 1 second, now you're telling me that you're allowed to eat kadshe kadshim in the lishka because of that special pasuk that says that even though it's not hallowed, you're allowed to eat kadshe kadshim in the lishkos. Are you suggesting that even if there's no visibility, you're allowed to eat kadshe kadshim in the lishka? V'hatanya Reb Yossi b'Reb Yehuda Omer Shnei Pashpashin Hayu Beveis HaChalifos Govan Shmona Kedei Lahachshir Es HaAzara La'achilas Kodshe Kodshim V'Lishchitas Kodshim Kalim. This brisa we just saw yesterday, that the reason why they cut out those mini doors on the backside of the ulam was to allow for visibility on all parts of the Azara, including the westernmost parts of the Azara, so that when you're eating Kodshe Kodshim or you're shechting Kodshim Kalim, you have visibility to the entrance to the Heichal. So according to what you're saying, you don't need visibility for eating. So Amar Ravina Sami Mikan Achila. Ravina says you're right. Cross out those words that say that you need visibility for eating Kodshe Kodshim. You only need visibility for shechting Kodshim Kalim. Again, we're changing the girsa. V'aksiv b'shalu es habasar pesach ol moed v'sham tochelu oso. But 1 second, says the Gemara, not so fast. What about the pasuk that is written in context of the miluim, of the inaugural of the Mishkan and of the Mizbeach, where there were special karbanos that had to be brought, and the Torah states over there, I need you to cook the meat by the doorway of the Ol Moed and eat it where it's at the opening. So it sounds like from that pasuk that there does need to be visibility in order to eat Kadshe Kodshim. The Gemara answers Kadshe Sha'a Shaini. That was only a special requirement for those unique karbanos that were mandated to be brought at the inauguration of the Mishkan. But all other future karbanos that are meant to be done on a perennial basis do not need to be eaten in a place where there's visibility of the opening of the Ohel Moed. So the conclusion of the Gemara essentially is that the lishkos are not sanctified. Therefore, if you enter into it in a state of tumah, you won't have to bring a karban. But you're allowed to eat kadshe kodshim there because of a special pasuk. But because it's not hallowed, you're not allowed to shecht kodshim kalim there. That's the conclusion of the Gemara. Now, Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Avudimi, minayin ladam shenifsal b'shkiyas achama. So now let's go on to another subject, going back to our topic of the shlamim sacrifice, which can be eaten for, let's say you shecht the shlamim on a Tuesday, you do the zrika of the shlamim on that same day, and you place the emurim, the innards, on the mizbeach, either during the day or that night, and you let the emurim continue to burn until the morning, but you're allowed to eat the meat of the karban shlamim for all of Tuesday night, and all of Wednesday until sunset. So the Gemara now here is dealing, I hope you got that. I hope that what I just said was helpful to you, because you're going to need that information for the rest of the daf today. Yes, I'm glad that you asked me to repeat it. There's an honest man. Okay, so the karban shlamim, we're going to give the example of you shechted on Tuesday. You do the zrika sadam on that self-same day, and you place the innards of the karban on the mizbeach, either on Tuesday day or Tuesday night. You will let the innards continue burning through the until dawn, until the next morning. Okay? But even though you finish the sacrificial part, the meat of the karban shlamim is still edible to you all Tuesday night, and all Wednesday until sunset. Okay? You got that information so far? Comes along the Gemara and says that the blood of the karban shlamim, even though the meat can be eaten for 2 days, but the blood of the shlamim has to be placed on the mizbeach on Tuesday. You cannot wait until Tuesday night or until Wednesday. How do you know that if you didn't do the zrika on Tuesday, the blood is pasul and the entire carbon is pasul? So shenamar biyom hakrivo es zivcho ye'achel. Because the Torah, in the context of a shlamim, says that on the same day that you're makriv, which means that you place on the mizbeach, you call it a zevach, you call it a slaughtered animal. So the slaughtering and the place and the bringing to the mizbeach are put together to teach you, biyom she'ata zoveach ata makriv, biyom she'iyata zoveach iyata makriv. On the day that you slaughter is the day that you bring the blood close. But if you slaughter on one day, you cannot bring the blood close on another day.
That's by sunset Tuesday.
By sunset Tuesday. So the Gemara says, how can you use that pasuk to teach me that halacha? Because haimi boy le legufe. You need the pasuk itself to tell you that the meat of the animal is edible both on Tuesday and Wednesday. That's what the simple import of the pasuk is. So how can you use it for a totally different halacha? Imkei neimakra biyom zivcho ye'achel hakrivo lama lishma mina biyom she'ata zaveach ata makriv biyom she'ata zaveach iyata makriv. So the Gemara answers because of the extraneous word. Why did the Torah have to say biyom hakrivo es zivcho, on the day that you're makriv the zevach, which means literally to bring close to the altar the slaughtered animal? Just say, on the day that you slaughter the animal, you can eat it, and the following day you can eat it. Why did the Torah have to talk about bringing close to the mizbeach? It's coming to tell you that we're connecting, bringing the blood to the mizbeach and the slaughter, that they have to be done on the self same day. V'dil mahachi kama rachmana. Ikar dam ha'idna nisachel basar ha'idna ulamachar. Ikar dam lamachar nisachel basar lamachar liyoma uchra. But maybe that's not the correct interpretation. Maybe the reason why the Torah talks about bringing close to the Mizbeach is for a different reason. It's coming to tell you that the 2-day expiration limit on the meat of a carbon shlamim is not dependent upon the slaughter, but is rather dependent on the day that you sprinkle it. Maybe I could read the pasuk this way, that really you could sprinkle the blood. If you slaughtered it on Tuesday, you could sprinkle the blood on Wednesday, right? But if you sprinkle it on the day after, then you have Wednesday and Thursday to eat it. In other words, the timer starts from when the time that you sprinkle the blood, not from the time that you slaughter it. Maybe that's what the Torah is telling you, that if I slaughter it and sprinkle it on Tuesday, then I have all of Tuesday and all of Wednesday to eat the meat. If I slaughter it on Tuesday and sprinkle it on Wednesday, then I have all of Wednesday and Thursday to eat. Maybe that's what the pasuk means. So the Gemara says, Imkei neimakra biyom hakrivo ye'achel zivcho lamali shma mina biyom she'ata zaveach ata makrivo biyom she'ata zaveach iyata makrivo. So the Gemara's answer is, because if the Torah was telling me that the law of expiration is dependent exclusively on the blood sprinkling, then why did the word zevach appear in the pasuk? Zevach talks about a slaughtered animal. So it must mean that the Torah is creating a dependency both on the slaughtering and on the sprinkling, because they have to be done on the same day. And therefore it's telling you that you must sprinkle on the same day that you slaughter, and you have the timer starts from the time that you do both of them, which is on a Tuesday. So you have all of Tuesday and therefore all of Wednesday. Itzmar. Hamachashev lo'or shlishi chizki amar kosher Rabbi Yochanan amar pasal. Now, a person has a machshava of pigul, that he wants to eat the meat of this carbon past its expiration date. If we're talking about a carbon shlamim, and I'm shechting the carbon shlamim on Tuesday with a machshava of pigul, I think about eating it on Wednesday night, after sunset. So you would think, what have I done? I've done an act of pigul, and I've pasaled the carbon, right? Comes along Chizkiah and tells us a huge chiddush that no, the carbon is still kosher. And Rabbi Yochanan is the one who says that it's pasal. Now, Rabbi Yochanan is very straightforward and easy to understand, but let's now try and understand Chizkiah. Chizkiah amar kosher dahalo intik lisreifa. Rabbi Yochanan amar pasal daha'idchi le'mei achila. So Chizkiah says the reason why it's not pasal is because it only becomes pasal when I have a thought of eating it at a time when the meat must be burned. As we'll see in a moment, when meat goes past its expiration date, it's called nosar. Bob, you got that word? Nosar? Nosar. So what does nosar mean? It means that you can no longer eat that meat, and instead you must burn it. That's what the Torah says to do with nosar. You must burn it. No. Of course not, because it's tainted. It's tainted meat. You can't put it on the mizbeach. So you have to burn it outside the camp. Right? So, as we're going to see later on, at what point can you burn nosar? You cannot burn nosar at night. You can only burn nosar during the day. So you have this limbo period, right, where the meat can no longer be eaten, but it cannot be burnt until the morning. So Chizkiah says that something is only subject to pigul when you think about eating it when it has to be burnt, not when it becomes inedible, but when it has to be burnt. And therefore, since I'm thinking about eating it Wednesday night, and it can't be burnt Wednesday night, so then it's not possible. It doesn't possible the carbon.
So you have to think about eating it Thursday morning in order for it to be pigul.
Yes, correct. And Rabbi Yochanan says, no, that's not my definition of nosar. I define nosar as anything that is past its expiration date, even though you can't burn it yet. Next case, which is very much related, ha'ochel lo or shlishi Chizkiah amar pater de lo intik lisreifa. Rabbi Yochanan amar chayev da ha'idchilei me achila. Now here is not where a person's having a machshava, but rather he's actually eating the meat past its expiration date. What if the shlamim was slaughtered on Tuesday, and a guy continues eating the meat of the shlamim on Wednesday evening, past Shkia? So Chizkiah says, you're pater, you don't have to bring a korban to atone for eating nosar, and Rabbi Yochanan says you're chayev because it's no longer edible. So Chizkiah, again, is consistent. He says it's dependent upon when the meat has to be burned. If I'm eating it before it has to be burned, it's not possible. I'm not in violation of eating nosar. And Rabbi Yochanan says you are in violation of eating nosar since it's past its expiration. So Tanya Kavah say to Rabbi Yochanan. And the Brisa now we have that goes in accord with Rabbi Yochanan, that it's not dependent upon burning, it's dependent upon when it's past its expiration. What does it say? Kodshim hane'echolim liyom echad, mechashvin bidaman mishetishka hachama, uvivsaran uve'emurehen mishayala mud hashachar. So the Brisa says like this: when you have kodshim that can only be eaten for one day and the following night, so then when is it subject to pigul? If I think about sprinkling the blood after sunset, since you can't do zrika on the mizbeach after sunset, if I have a machshava that I'm going to do zrika after sunset while I'm shechting the animal, that passels it because of pigul. Now, if I think about eating the meat and burning the innards after dawn, so then that also has a machshava of pigul. If I think about either placing the innards on the mizbeach after dawn, or I think about eating the meat after dawn, so then it's, again, I'm thinking about going past the proper time. So then once again, I've created done an act of pigul, and the carbon is pasul. But kodshim hanechalim l'shnei yamim v'layla echas mechashve b'dava mishetishka hachama uve'emureha mishayala amud hashachar uvivsarin mishetishka hachama shel shnei yamim. But when it comes to kodshim like shlamim that can be eaten for 2 full days, like a Tuesday night, and a Wednesday, so then in that situation, if I'm thinking about the blood that I want to sprinkle it, then the same halacha applies. If I think about sprinkling it past Tuesday after sunset, so then that's pigul. If I'm thinking about placing the emurim, the innards on the mizbeach past dawn, that also is pigul. But when it comes to eating, if I think about eating the meat past Wednesday at Shkia, so then that's also pigul. So what do you see from this brisa? That it goes like Rabbi Yochanan, that it's not dependent upon when I have to burn the nosar, but when the nosar is no longer edible. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan prevails. Tanu Rabbanan. So now let's go back to this whole idea. Now we're going to get to the source text of how I know that the obligation to burn nosar is only during the daytime. Yachol yu nechalim la'or shlishi. You might think that a korban shlamim could be eaten even on a Wednesday night. Like you might think that when they shecht on a Tuesday, you could eat it Tuesday night, Wednesday, and Wednesday night. Maybe that should be the halacha. Because v'dinu, and I'll make the logical argument, Zvachim ne'echalim liyom echad uzvachim ne'echalim l'shnei yamim. I have, after all, some karbanos that can only be eaten for one day, and some karbanos that are allowed to be eaten for 2 days. Ma zvachim anechalm liyom echad layla achreihem, ma zvachim anechalm l'shnei yomim layla achreihem. And they're just like a korban, let's say a korban asham, right, can only be eaten for one day, but the night follows. I have until dawn to eat the meat of that korban. So to argue that a korban like a shlamim that can be eaten for 2 days, I have the night afterwards as well with which to eat the korban. So therefore, Talmud lomar v'hanosar ad yom, ba'od yom hu nechal ve'enu nechal lo or shlishi. So therefore, when the pasuk talks about nosar, it says ad yom hashlishi, until the 3rd day, right? Which Rashi explains what we learn from that. Language is gabe achila ksiv b'kedoshim tiyu b'yom zibachim yechel mochros v'hanosar ad yom ba'od shehu yom tochalenu, where the Torah is basically saying that you can only eat it while it's still daytime of the 2nd day. You cannot continue eating it. It says ad yom. In other words, the way that we read the pasuk is only while it is still day are you allowed to. Well, it's questionable what the correct girsa is. Ba'od, that ad yom hu nechal ve'enu nechal lo or shlishi. That only during the daytime of the 2nd day can you eat it, but you cannot eat it after Wednesday day. You know, you can't eat it after Shkia on Wednesday.
You can't say until the day of the next day, like we were saying this one.
Right. So yom in this context means how long do I have to eat it? Only while it's still day of the 2nd day.
So ad lo yom.
Right. Ad velo ad bichlal, or maybe here it's ad yom. Right. Ad ve'ad bichlal, right? We're saying that the word yom here means the 2nd day, right? Even though the Torah says ad yom hashalishi, right? Even though the Torah says in this pasuk v'anosar ad yom hashalishi ba'eshtis yisaref, I guess what we're saying is the extra word yom is a reference to the 2nd day. That only while it's the 2nd day can you eat it, but not beyond that. Okay, Yachol Yisarif Miyad, so you then, okay, if I can only eat it Tuesday night and Wednesday until Shkia, so then once Shkia elapses, then I should be allowed to burn it right away. Once it becomes nosar. V'dinu, zvachim nechalim liyom echad, zvachim nechalim l'shnei yomim, ma zvachim nechalim liyom echad, tekef la'achila sreifa, av zvachim nechalim l'shnei yomim, tekef la'achila sreifa. And after all, let me make the following logical argument. For those karbanos that can only be eaten for 1 day, we say that you can eat it, let's say, the whole day Tuesday, all of Tuesday night, but once it goes beyond Wednesday morning at dawn, you have to burn it. So as soon as I can no longer eat it, that's the time when I'm supposed to burn it. So say the same thing by a shlamim, that I can only eat it Tuesday night, and Wednesday. Wednesday at Shkia is when I can no longer eat it. So just like by the 1 day korban, as soon as I can no longer eat it, I have to burn it. Say the same thing as once I can no longer eat the meat of the shlamim on Wednesday at Shkia, I have a mitzvah to burn it. So therefore, Talmud lomar, bayom hashalishi ba'esi saref. Therefore, I have another pasuk that says, only on the day of the 3rd shall you burn it, which means Thursday morning. Bayom tasarfo via tasarfo balayla, to teach me that I can only burn it during the day, I cannot burn it at night. So therefore, there's that limbo period by the korban shlamim, that it expires Wednesday at Shkia, but I cannot burn it until Thursday morning. And that just sort of reflects back on what we were just learning.
So that
before.
doesn't exist on a 1 day korban?
That limbo does not exist for a 1 day korban, because as soon as you can no longer eat it at dawn, it's daytime, so therefore you have the mitzvah to burn it.
Right. So it's not really 1 day and 2 days. It's almost like 1 day and a day and a half, almost, that you can eat it.
Makes us a yom shakul.
You're right. It's if you divide every day into 2 12-hour periods, so then you're right. It's not for a 48-hour period. It's a 36-hour period that you can eat a korban shlamim. Yeah. That's absolutely correct. Let's go on to the next Mishnah. Ha-bechor v'ha-maiser v'ha-pesach kodshim kalim. Now the Mishnah groups 3 different kinds of kodshim kalim together. The bechor korban, which is your firstborn animal born to your kosher animal, you have to give to the kohen. It belongs to the kohen. and the Kohen has to bring it as a korban, assuming that it's unblemished. Meiser behema is every 10th animal that is born from this year's crop of animals. You have them exit your corral single file, and every 10th animal you paint with a paint mark to designate that as the 10th animal. You bring that animal up to Yerushalayim and bring it as a korban. And the third one is korban Pesach. Of course, we know about the korban Pesach. So these are all kachim kalim. Shchitasen b'chol makom ba'azara, and therefore you can shecht at any place in the azara. V'daman ton matana echas. But what makes these different from what we've said before is up until now we've been requiring a matana of blood, a placement of blood on two opposite corners so that all four walls are covered. Now, the reason for that is, as Rashi says, is because the Torah says by those previous karbanos the word saviv. You shall place the blood on the mizbeach all around, which implies on all four walls. But by these three karbanos, the Torah does not use the word saviv, and therefore you only have to make one placement on the mizbeach. However, uvilvad sheyitain keneged hayesod, provided that the placement of blood is on a portion of the mizbeach that has the yesod, that protruding foundation. So on the south side and on the east side, you cannot do a placement of blood because there's no yesod. Shina ba'achilasan, these three are similar according to the aforementioned. But where they differ is as far as who has a right to eat the meat of these karbanos. Habechor nechal lekohanim, the firstborn animal is the property of the kohanim, is eaten by the kohanim. V'hamaiser lechol adam, meiser behema, however, belongs to the owner. He just has to bring it as a korban, but he can eat it and share the meat with whoever he wants. And these foods can be eaten throughout the city of Yerushalayim, the meats of these karbanos. You prepared in any way you like it. You can boil it, you can roast it, you can bake it, and you have 2 days, the Tuesday night, and Wednesday in which to eat it. But here's where the korban Pesach is different. The korban Pesach cannot be eaten for 36 hours, but rather can only be eaten the night of the 15th. Ve'eno nechal ela ad chatzos, and rabbinically it can only be eaten until midnight. And ve'eno nechal ela l'minuyo, and only people who are pre-designated or pre-registered for that korban Pesach can eat it. Ve'eno nechal ela tzli, and it can only be eaten roasted, in contrast with the other two, which can be prepared in any way that you like.
How do you determine who's registered?
As long as a person is designated by the owner of the animal before Pesach starts, before the animal is shechted, I should say, then then that person is considered designated. That's all discussed in Maseches Pesachim.
Yeah, easier we have a computer to.
That's right. Are you pre-registered?
Right.
Look it up in the database. Okay, Mantana. Who is the author of our Mishnah? Amar Rav Chisda Rabbi Yossi Aglili. It's Rabbi Yossi Aglili. The Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer, Chelbolo nemar ela chelbam, domolo nemar ela damam, limed al bechor umaiser upesach, sheteunin matan damim ve'imurm lagabi mizbeach. So when you look at the pasuk that's written by the bechor, it doesn't say its fat or its blood shall be placed on the mizbeach, but rather their fat and their blood shall be placed on the mizbeach. What we learn from here is that the requirement to do placement on the mizbeach does not just apply to the bechor korban, but any korban which is similar to the bechor korban, which includes both the meiser behema, every 10th animal korban, and the korban pesach. Now, even though by the meiser behema and korban pesach it does not say explicitly to place anything on the mizbeach, we learn from bechor that you also place their blood on the mizbeach as well. Now, keneged hayesod minol, and how do you know that for all these three karbanos, the blood has to be placed on an area of the mizbeach which has the yesod? Amar Rabbi Eliezer, astya zrika me'ola. So we learn gzeira shava because the verb vizarku or vizarak appears, throwing the blood, appears both by the korban bechor and by the korban ola. So by the ola, we know that it has to be placed by the yesod. Va'ola gufa minol, and how do we know that? Tichsiv el yesod mizbach ha'ola. Limeid al olas chova shetuuna yesod. So because when the Torah talks about the mizbeach, it calls it the mizbeach of the ola, that El Yesod you shall place on the Yesod of the Mizbeach of the Ola. So the Torah associates the Ola with the Yesod, and that's how I know that the Ola's blood has to be placed corresponding to where there's a Yesod. So, Imala Halan Shtei Matano Shein Arba, Afkan Shtei Matano Shein Arba. Now, one second, if you're already making a Gzeira Shava between the Bechor and the Ola, we know that an Ola has to have its blood placed on all four sides of the Mizbeach. So maybe that should be the requirement also by a Bechor, and then by extension to the Korban Pesach and to the Meiser Behema Korban. So Amar Abaya, Lama li lamichtav saviv ba'ola saviv b'chata, savu shnei ksubim b'oim ke'echad, v'roshtu ksubim b'oim ke'echad, ein malamdin. So the answer is because even though there's a Gzeira Shava from Bechor to Ola, but by the Ola it says explicitly the word saviv, that the blood has to be placed all around. And we know that by the Chatas also it says the word saviv. Anytime I have the Torah repeating a special halacha, such as place the blood on all four sides, and it repeats it unnecessarily by another korban, it's coming to teach me that it's localized to only those two cases, and that special law does not apply to anything else, even when that something else is connected via a Gzeira Shava. And that's the Gemara's main point, is that since Saviv is mentioned by the Ola and by the Chatas, it's localized only to the Ola and the Chatas, and I cannot extend it. So the Gemara says, Hanicha laman da'amar in malamdin, laman da'amar malamdin ma'ika l'meimar. But that in itself is a machlokus, because there is an opinion that says that when a law appears in two separate psukim, we don't necessarily have to localize it to only those two laws, but rather to only those two mitzvahs, but it can be extended to other cases as well. But the Gemara says, but in this case, Havi Asham Shlosha Vadai in Malamdin. But in this case, it's not just written by the Ola and the Chatas, the word Saviv. The word Saviv also appears by the Korban Asham. So now that it's localized to three types of Karbanos, then for sure everyone would agree that it's meant to only be localized to those three mitzvos and not to be extended to anywhere else. In other words, even though you may say that you can extend a law that appears in two places to other cases, but if it appears in three places, then everyone agrees that it's localized to only those three places and cannot be extended to anywhere else. And that's how I know that the Bechor and its companions, Meiser, Behema, and Pesach, only require a placement on one side and do not require placement on all four sides. We'll hold it here for today. A good Erev Shabbos.